This is the Smallmouth Crush Podcast Season 2. If you're a hardcore angler, you've come to the right place. This podcast that will interview some of the top local and regional anglers in North America. Anglers who consistently finish near the top in both largemouth and smallmouth bass fishing tournaments. Travis and his guest will discuss techniques and strategies used to help these anglers stay so consistent and help you become a better angler and gain an edge on your body of water. And now, here's your host of the Smallmouth Crush Podcast, Travis Manson.
Hello, welcome to the Smallmouth Crush Podcast. My name is Travis Manson. We got another great guest. So much knowledge that we're finding out with all these local and regional anglers here in Season 2. If you guys are not familiar with myself, I put a lot of great fishing content out on my YouTube channel, Smallmouth Crush, and this is Season 2 of the actual podcast every other week, and we're basically sitting down with some top anglers across the country and learning so much, whether it be fishing up north, whether it be fishing out on the West Coast, whether it be some of these southern boys, and just all around great information that you can take and utilize these tips and techniques to help you catch more fish on your home body of water. But before we get into our next guest, I do want to talk, of course, about the Reel Shot. The Reel Shot's been a sponsor of the program, and they got some great tackle. If you're interested in taking a look at what the Reel Shot has, you head on over to thereelshot.com. All kinds of bass tackle, pretty much everything. They're located in Wisconsin, so if you're into walleye fishing, salmon and trout, of course, they got a lot of hunting equipment as well. So if you haven't purchased from the Reel Shot before, you can use my code SmallmouthCrush15, and you're going to get 15% off your first order. Head on over to the Reel Shot and go check them out. Let them know Smallmouth Crush sent you. Let's bring on our next guest. Drew, how are you doing?
Hey, man, I'm here, Travis. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Man, you're in the bass boat. I love it. I love it. That's great. Probably want to get your GPS waypoint since you're right there. Is that going to be a problem?
Man, I've not been real good about making sure I get those deleted or withdrawn before I change boats. So I think there's a lot of them out there floating around.
Has that ever happened to you? You ever sell a boat? That happened to me once. I remembered right before he was going to take possession of the boat. Like, we were literally in the title company parking lot. And I'm like, hey, buddy, I got to do one thing real quick. And I had to tell him, I'm like, I got to delete these waypoints, man.
Yeah. That report is very important before selling, guys. Make that note for sure.
Hey, listen, before I get into all these questions, you give us a quick little breakdown about yourself, where you're from, some of the home bodies of water, what you're up to when it comes to fishing. Then we can get into it.
Man, I know you guys are real blessed with all those great northern lakes of smallmouth. I've been watching several of your episodes, and it seems like people typically live pretty close to major bodies of water. So I feel the same about myself right here. Living in Middle Tennessee, just east of Nashville, about 35 minutes. It's a town called Lebanon. Man, the Tennessee River basically just does a circle around this area. Almost every Tennessee River lake is within 2.5 hours from where I live. And in addition to that, we got within an hour, like Del Hollow Lake, Center Hill Lake, Old Hickory Lake, Percy Priest Lake, Lake Cumberland. It's just, Cumberland River, which is not Lake Cumberland in Kentucky. But either way, there's just a ton of opportunities to fish right here from where I'm from. I work as a home builder and a real estate investor. I'm married and got 2 great children, a little boy that's 7 years old now and eager to be in the boat with me and to get going. So that's kind of a little background about where I am and one reason why it's so easy to find myself on a lake at any given day like you guys.
That's a lot of options. You mentioned a lot of great bodies of water, legendary bodies of water, if you will, places where a lot of bass tournaments, a lot of events, big time events, come to those areas. But as far as all the choices that you have, give me like, what's one body of water that's really special to you or that you love to fish?
Man, I'm going to have to say Kentucky Lake. Kentucky Lake has been good to me. It's such a giant body of water. When I first started competing on that lake, it was overwhelming for me. And at some point, after a couple of years of maybe more than that, getting my butt whooped in tournaments, I just dialed into a certain section of the lake. So this is what I'm going to practice. I'm going to eliminate that area and this area, and I'm going to focus on this. And after a couple of years of doing that, I got dialed in, I guess, basically just on confidence in a certain 20-mile stretch of the lake. It became my favorite. And so from January to December, I can find a way to get bit on that lake. And it seems as though other lakes around here, man, it's sometimes so hard to be consistent and so hard to show up each and every day and get quality fish. Now, I know Kentucky Lake's been on a quote unquote downfall, and it 100% did that. But man, it's still got, in my opinion, a lot more fish in it than most lakes around here.
Interesting. I was going to ask you about that because I assume when you learn how to break down that body of water, and first of all, that's some great advice. I think that's great advice for anyone that's listening. Taking a body of water that's massive, Kentucky Lake. I mean, there's a number, any of those bodies of water on the Tennessee River. You can take this up north. You can take it down to Lake Okeechobee. Settle in on a certain area that fits your strengths, I'm assuming, is what you're doing.
That's correct, yeah.
And try to expand and focus on that. And I really think that's some great advice. When you started fishing Kentucky Lake, like how long ago was this?
I think it was probably in the late 2008, 9-ish, somewhere in that range, 7, 8. I think I started fishing the BFLs, if I'm not mistaken, like 2003 or 4, maybe 5. I can't remember now. I think there were several years that our division did not go to Kentucky Lake. And then out of nowhere, it started adding Kentucky Lake to the list. And at that time, Travis, I mean, I would only fish the division here around the Music City division in BFLs. I just didn't really think of traveling a little bit east or west to fish other divisions. It just hadn't clicked to me yet. So it wasn't very long into going there that I started really liking it. And then I started thinking, well, I'll just go fish the LBL division. And I think in maybe 2000, I'm going to say 10, 11, somewhere in that neighborhood, I started fishing there. When you put a couple of days, a tournament, Friday, Saturday, and then you do that 5 times a year, next thing you get 10, 15 days on the lake, and then do that a few years in a row, and things start to come together. It took me a while. I mean, a lot of not doing well before I ever started doing well on that lake, but I have fallen in love with it for sure. Lake Chickamauga's pretty close to my heart as well. I don't get to fish it as much. Again, not many tournaments have gone there. But when you go to a lake and you can get bit different times of the year and you can catch fish doing multiple techniques throughout the year, it makes it enjoyable. And those 2 bodies of water stand out to me as far as, I guess I would say, my favorites within a couple hours from me.
As far as the ways to catch them on Kentucky Lake and learning that lake and breaking it down, do you have a particular favorite time of year or a technique that you really enjoy?
I can pretty much tell you the end of April, the first couple of weeks of May, when the water finally, they do a winter drawdown on Kentucky Lake. So as April rains come in, they start letting the water up. It gets in the bushes there. Man, back when I first was educated on that from some friends of mine, we used to take just like the whole week off and just go there and flip bushes. Man, when they first pull up, it's very fun. Even with the lake not as good as it used to be, nowhere close, it is still very fun to go flip bushes in that 3 or 4 week period of end of April and 1st of May.
Okay, so you got 3 to 4 weeks that the waters come up and these fish are in habitat that they normally weren't, I guess, accessible to.
That's right.
And so now you got a whole bunch of new water to work. I'm assuming it's fairly shallow, right?
That is correct. Kentucky Lake is fairly flat once you get off the river channel. It is. Yes, sir. Most of the times, if you can, be sitting in a boat, if it's a typical, like normal summer pool, which is at 359 elevation, it gets like 360, man, everything's got money water level on it. But at that just normal summer pool, you need to be trying to find some water where you can sit and, on your transducer, be reading 1.5 to 2.5 feet. But there's still plenty of water where you're flipping in those bushes. So that's like the key. I think it's shallow. It's always going to be shallow, pretty much, yeah.
Most bass anglers have heard all about the Asian carp. And what's your take on that? I'm curious. Is it that bad? And is it a problem? Is it being fixed?
Man, that's a great question. I've heard it come up here recently. A friend of mine, Cole Floyd, and his dad, Steve Floyd, I think he was on a television show here recently and got and talked about that. He and I are kind of on the same page. The Asians have been there for a very long time. They were there when the lake was the best it ever was, and well before that. Have they multiplied? Absolutely, 100%. I think, however, that the big change was this lake was flourishing like crazy. And then the grass, all of a sudden out of nowhere, went from all over the lake to zero, like just one winter. And I don't know if it was the flooding that occurred that winter or the substantial drawdown that occurred that winter with very extreme low temperatures that killed it, but it was dead. And then after that, everybody started talking about the Asians because it was real easy at that point in time with no grass on the lake to scan everything. And in scanning everything, you would just see millions of Asian carp, and you would very rarely still find bass. At that point in time, people started going shallow, which I didn't like as much because they had kind of all been focused on fishing the ledges and the, it's Kentucky Lake's known for the bars and ledges that it's known for. From all year long, you can catch fish doing that, and you still can. But I think when those carp took over those spots, those fish kind of went more to the banks, which made them more sparse and not so concentrated. They put a lot of fishermen on the bank at that point in time, but shallow fishing became dominant for several years there, and I think it's just now getting a little bit better on fishing, what I call fishing out, fishing offshore.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I want to circle back because you mentioned that fishing the bushes is one of your favorite ways to fish on Kentucky Lake. Talk to me about some of the different techniques that you're using when they do get up shallow.
I primarily like to pitch and flip when it's that time, and I won't do much else other than that unless there is some stem grass that grows in some areas or just certain little gravel points. I'll pick up a buzz bait possibly, just not going in between bushes. But other than a topwater presentation, just kind of covering water, I'm primarily going to be pitching and flipping some sort of a plastic in those bushes.
Okay.
And you might have hours, Travis, not catch anything, then you can get to one stretch where they're pulled up, and then one pocket, one little stretch of bushes, and there you go. You got your bag. It's real fun. It's really enjoyable. I think Andy Morgan would really appreciate it.
When you find these areas that the fish are holding, is this something that you're like, okay, we found them. It took most of the day, but here's a big group of them. Can you count on those fish hanging around for a few days once you locate them? Or is this a game where they're there one day and gone the next?
I think once you've caught them, they're pretty much you've caught them and taken them off. Yeah, I don't think that they do move up and down, but I haven't seen it so much that you can catch 4, 5, 7 fish out of one pocket and then be able to come back the next day and still catch that many, especially the good ones. Especially, they're moving up small. I think once you catch them, you caught them off that particular spot.
I've never fished Kentucky Lake that time of year, but how you're describing, I'm just imagining there's a lot of structure, a lot of places to flip and pitch. You're going along with some type of plastic. What's your main plastic that you're using?
Man, I got really keyed on the tube crawl about probably 10 years ago. Love the tube style bait. That's how it kind of originated. Okay. As you know, and you guys have talked about it a lot, that it's just an all-time fish catching machine, the tube is. And rigging that with a 3/8 or ½ ounce weight and pitching it in a heavy cover, it probably glides and slides better than any bait that I'm aware of. It gets in spots, and when it gets in it, you can kind of pop it, and you know how it does. It's natural glide, and I get really sold on that. But I was having a hard time getting a real good hookup ratio with the tube sometimes, and also keeping my skin hooked without getting hung. So when I found the tube crawl, it has those little ribs, and like a beaver or something, and I think those ribs help keep that point of your hook covered, yet very able to come out easily into the fish, when you set the hook, but yet keeps it covered so you can go in the thickest stuff and pull it out of the thickest stuff. And I love jig fishing. I love flipping the jig. But when it comes to coming in and out of a thick target, in my opinion, it is not the best, nowhere close. That using a plastic of some sort is better. So the beaver style baits are hard to beat a lot of times, but the tube crawl to me has been just my confidence bait. And I know a lot of the guys that's been on the show talk about their confidence bait, and it's very important. And I think once you have a confidence bait on, Travis, and I bet you can agree, it's almost like it runs from the reel, through your hands, through the reel, right out the line, right down to the bait. It says bite, and that's just that's what that bait is for me. So from 55 degrees on up to 95 degrees, I'm gonna be pitching, flipping the tube crawl.
Okay. So I gotta talk to you a little bit more about that, because that's really interesting. Some great tips. Now, you brought it up. One of the reasons why I've struggled in the past, I know a lot of anglers that try to fish a tube, a standard style tube, is how to rig it properly, how to hook it. Getting there's different size tubes out there, and of course, matching it up with the perfect hook is sometimes hard, especially when you're flipping and pitching heavy cover, because you got all kinds of stuff you're getting your tube into, dealing with the branches, with the bushes, with whatever you're flipping. Having to straighten that out and constantly work that tube to try to make it look and act natural is important. But before we even get into that, so the tube crawl, is that what you're referring to? Is that, fill us in, is that a brand, or is that actually a description base of some tubes that are on the market? How would you describe that tube crawl? Is there a particular brand, or is that the brand?
Yeah,
I'm just a little.
Grab my rod real quick.
Oh, sweet.
All right, so I think the OG of the crawl tube / tube crawl, I'm not sure what was the proper, or it was Lake Fork, I think was the originality on that thing. Whenever they lost their patent, apparently Big Bite Baits must have got that or started producing it. And we can see there. You try to get it. How's that look? Oh, yeah, you see it?
Yep.
All right, so
that's the Big Bite. That's Big Bite Baits brand.
It is, yes, sir. Hook that we've dialed in on using, again, I'm gonna try to, can't really quite see here, is the KVD Mustad, and it's got this little. We'll try to pull it down. It's got that little keeper up there on it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can do that or not. So I used to, with that regular tube, before I found this keeper, even with that regular tube now, as big as the head is on a regular tube, and sometimes we'll pull down over the back of the hook when you set the hook, and it fills the gap, right? I'm sure you've had that happen fishing plastics. So that little keeper up there, when you set the hook, allows that head to stay up and exposes that hook. And I do flare that hook out a little bit to make it lay straight with the ribs, so that when you do skin hook it, it's basically just in a straight line. I mean, perfectly straight line.
It is,
and
yeah.
Something that I've really used to I guess exaggerate the glide of a tube. This tube crawl doesn't quite have that natural glide like the regular tube does.
Sure.
This is a flatter style weight. It's called the creature weight. Jinko Fishing is where I get that from. It's actually something I had part of in producing a while back. But that weight has big red eyes on it. This one's all busted up from using it for a long time, but it's got big red eyes and it's somewhat flat, Travis. And I can sometimes, as I'm swimming it back to me, pop it a couple times and kill it, and I watch that thing glide 6 or 7 inches. It'll make you almost want to set the hook sometimes, like you think a fish has gotten it. Right? It's pretty cool, man, how that little bait comes together whenever you put it in cover too. It's really, really easy in and out. It's got a good hookup ratio. Not as good as a jig. I mean, a jig's going to hook up probably better. Any plastic bait's going to have a percentage of loss because you don't know how they grab the plastic and the hook whenever they actually grab it. You don't know which way that hook's facing. You just set the hook as hard as you can and hope that you stick it. But I think as far as getting in and out of cover, as far as having action while you're in cover, and then once you're swimming it back to the boat past the cover, I think you can't beat that right there. I mean, a beaver's good too, but beaver seems to twist my line a little more than the tube does as I'm swimming it back.
Or how about the fact that everybody's throwing a beaver? This is unique,
right,
man. I'm learning something right here.
Yeah,
this is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. That beaver style bait, there's a variety of those brands that are very good, but it is a lot of people fishing it. Of course, it's very productive, but this is a little bit bigger profile. And I've had co-anglers at some point say, man, that's a gaudy bait you're fishing. And I was like, man, you're hunting for 5 fish and they eat a lot bigger stuff than this, I promise you. So I think we're going to be good. So fishing something a little bit thicker and bigger profile, trying to catch, heavier fish during that days, I think helps sometimes.
Is that weight, was that lead or tungsten?
It is lead. Yeah, it's lead. I think it would be amazing to have it in tungsten. I think, however, it would shrink the head size to get the same weight, obviously. And I don't think you want the head size any smaller than it is.
Yeah.
I think the head size, like, it just continues the plastic somewhat in that same size of the plastic. And then it also allows it that flatness to glide. So if that was smaller, and I just don't think it would create any extra action to the bait. It just wouldn't have enough there to I guess you would say, mass to push water to create a glide.
Plus, it has eyes, dude.
Could be wrong, and I could be wrong. We haven't even experimented with it. I just kind of thought to myself that it makes sense to not even to try it, because I think we've got it dialed in on where it is.
Yeah. Well, the eyes alone is intriguing.
The eyes are really cool. Yeah, and a little bit clearer water. Travis, I really like throwing or pitching that bait over behind something, right? And you kind of yo-yo it behind, over a limb or over a lay down, behind a root ball, and then when you pick it up and bring it over it, you can watch for whatever clarity you have there what that bait does. And when that sun hits those eyes, man, it throws a little flash. And the majority of the times when you bring that bait over something to watch it fall, it does not fall straight down, ever. It almost always will take a direction, which I think is more lifelike and more realistic in the water column. And I think creates more bites, and personally.
So that KVD hook, what size was that? 4, 5?
It is 4, yep. I do the 4 and the 5, primarily the 4, and then twist it out a little bit. The 5, I've experimented with that. Man, I've got this theory about years, right? So it seems like when you trend one direction in a year, you do well. The next year, you might not. So I had one year that I went with the 5, and it was like, all right, the 5's the deal. I'm not hardly losing anything. Well, the very next year, I stick with the 5, and I lose everything I set the hook on. So I'm just kind of, I think the fish is a little better with the 4, a little bit less hangy. So I'm sticking with the 4. I can't quite figure out exactly what I like the best, and I try it back and forth. I would like to say I had good run with one being better than the other, but years seem so trendy to me. I think if the good Lord wants you to lose that fish, you're going to lose it. It ain't got nothing to do with that hook.
Now, as far as the weight itself, you mentioned 3/8, ½ ounce. Are those the 2 sizes it comes in, or is there a variety of sizes?
I think it's 1/4, 3/8, a half, and 5/8.
Okay.
5/8 I use often, especially when the water gets a little bit higher in the cover, where you're actually flipping into something that might be deeper than 2 or 3 feet. So you want a faster fall in through it. Then I use the 5/8 at that point. I think you ought to check it out. It's really helped my confidence level and flipping, and also flipping right behind somebody doing the same thing. 2 things that go with that. I think I got something different that they don't have, and I feel like I can put the bait hopefully in places they can't, or at least attempt to.
Is that weight pegged or unpegged?
I will always peg it. Yes, sir, Travis.
Okay.
Just using the bobber stopper method. I used the old school toothpick method for a long time, but then once I got sold on the bobber stoppers and confidence that the fish will not see that bobber stopper, then I've used that ever since.
Your ratio and medium, heavy. What type of rod you like to use with that setup?
So, great question, man. I have attempted to use the higher speed gear ratios. I know that a lot of pros have, and they think that, that 2 or 3 cranks with the reel before you set the hook is why you need it. A lot of times in Charlotte, those fish will get it and they're coming to you. So you need to be able to crank the line fast before setting the hook. In my opinion, whenever you get past the cover and you're actually just fishing the bait back to the boat, anything past the 6/8 is too fast. And it feels a little too draggy with 25-pound line. A little too, like, it just feels like I'm almost dragging something, and I feel like you don't get as many bites fishing it back. So this tube crawl, I'll catch a lot of my fish after I've left the cover and then kind of just dancing it back to the boat, underneath the water. And I think that 6/8, because you already got a long rod. I'm fishing a 7-11, so you already got a long rod, and so it takes up a lot of line. I don't think that you need the high-speed reel, in my opinion.
Okay.
I like the 6/8. In my opinion, the 6/8 is what it's the best.
Now, you mentioned something that was interesting. 25-pound fluoro.
It is fluorocarbon, yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
I've experimented with the 30. 30 is okay. It just, you can't quite get as much line on the spool, especially if I do I guess you would call it like a little filler line on the spool before I tie my main line on there, just to make the line go farther. And when even with flipping, sometimes if there's a target a full cast away, I don't want to pull my boat all the way over there to it. I'll make a cast to that target and fish it just as I'm moving quickly along the whatever I'm fishing there. So I want to be able to make a long cast with it. In 30, you just can't quite make a long cast with it. There's not enough line on the spool. So I like that 25. And as long as it can take the heat of the hook set, and I finally have found through a friend of mine, Adam Widener, which is somebody you might want to reach out to about getting on the show. He's the best. I guess he's the best all time in reference to local anglers, based off statistics anyway.
Yeah.
And he turned me on to the right line that can take the swing and take the swing while the line's actually over a target, over a limb, behind the dock, and be able to swing like you need to get the hook set and not break your line. I have broke off of more fish than you can imagine, Travis, setting the hook, and I hope those days are gone finally, Lord willing. I hope.
So what's the secret?
The Trilene Go Box, Trilene 25. They made it. I've been fishing that same Trilene I guess they call it the Go label with the Go Box. I've been fishing that same Trilene on my football jigs and Texas rig rods, cranking rods. I mean, pretty much for everything 4.0. But had never known that they made 25 in it. And when he finally told me, I had to order it. But yeah, that's been a game changer for me so far.
We covered a lot in a short period of time. Time's flying by. Guys, we're going to take a quick break, and then I want to talk to Drew. What makes a good tournament angler? I want to really find out what gets you going when it comes to the tournament scene. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Smallmouth Crush podcast. Don't rush out to the water just yet. We'll be right back after this break.
I really enjoy helping people become better anglers. And you can head on over to SmallmouthCrush.com, and I'm offering a one-on-one meeting. Basically, it's an hour meeting over the computer where we'll break down and talk about anything and everything fishing related, whether you want a new set of eyes on a body of water that you fish on a regular basis, or perhaps plan for an upcoming tournament, techniques, tips, whatever it may be. I've had a lot of fun working with anglers over the last year or two with this project. Smallmouth Crush one-on-one. If you're interested, sign up and let's schedule something together. All right, now you made me spend a bunch more money. Like every episode we have, I'm going to get those weights. I'm going to try it. This craw tube is very intriguing because I am a fan of a tube, and it's kind of like a cross between a creature and a tube, and it has its own little deal that you sold me, bro. If it works for you, it'll work for me, right?
I hope so. There's been several people in my fishing buddy circle, I suppose, that have also had good success. I mean, another guy named Daniel Johnson. He's my team partner. His stats right now are phenomenal, and no longer he's been fishing, and it's helped him do well, in some tournaments. The Adam Widener's also, I think he won that Toyota Series flipping that this past year in Del Hollow. So yeah, it's an impressive bait, man. But we got to talk about the drop shot, right? So just your smallmouth crush. I mean, we're talking heavy line, big stuff. I love that, right? But drop shot fishing, it's something that I've got to learn about. At this point in time, I think 15 to 17 years in the tournament fishing, I have never tied on a drop shot.
Come on
with that now. So all this I've been watching, it seems to be consensus that I am missing the boat, not fishing the drop shot.
I think sometimes, I'll tell you what, I don't like talking about myself on these podcasts, but I will share a quick story that might help you just to kind of get you a little more motivated to put a drop shot on. And it actually happened on Kentucky Lake. It was a fall championship tournament a number of years ago, while the lake was not fishing up to its prime. And everyone kept saying, get on the shallow bars and throw a top water or look for schooling fish. And I tried, I bought the shower blows and did all that stuff. And I could not. I caught a few nice fish, but it wasn't like something I was consistent with. I only had 4 or 5 days of practice. So I fell back on what I'm comfortable with. I looked for something on that lake that reminded me of, something I would find up in the northern part of the country, and it was man-made structure. And I put a drop shot on with a worm, and I was able to at least stay in contention for that event using the drop shot and fishing my string. So I know for a fact it'll definitely work. It's definitely different.
Were you catching largemouth? Yeah.
Yep, all largemouth. Yep.
Largemouth. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that definitely get me motivated. I mean, there's not that much man-made structure on the lake, so I can dial it in just in a couple of days, probably. Yeah.
It was very obvious stuff, but I was consistent fishing it, and I was able to kind of protect the area and bounce around to a couple other man-made deals in the same area, and I was able to at least squeeze by and survive. I probably had and I shouldn't say this, I did upgrade a couple fish on a shower blow later in the day, but that drop shot at least got me the confidence right away, get a nice limit, and it worked out. But speaking of tournaments and confidence and whatnot, you do well pretty much a lot of the different bodies of water that you fish. What is the key to staying consistent out there? Because there's so many great anglers. You named a few as well that you probably compete against on a regular basis. What's some advice as far as trying to stay consistent and competitive, especially for guys that are at this level? There could be, you could have 20, 30 top sticks you're competing against every weekend. And trying to come out on top is the key.
All right, Travis, man, I think here's the deal. In my opinion, again, everybody's got their own with that. I think the good Lord sometimes gives it to people, and they got it. And I ain't saying that I got it, but there is definitely something that makes me wake up and just be excited about going fishing. And that could happen every day of the whole year. And when I get there, there's something, I guess you can call it instinctual, or you can call it led, that tells me what I need to be doing. Now, I'm going to say that non-electronically anyway, just instinct of putting the boat on the water and saying, okay, here's where we are in reference to water temperature, water clarity, wind, weather conditions, spawn, time of the year, whatever you want to call it, and being able just to say, I'm going to catch fish this way. And if that necessarily doesn't work, you just eliminated that part of the puzzle and you try something else. And within, I'm going to say, hopefully by the first half of the day anyway, you've put together something that can finish the day on to catch fish. I put a lot of time into fishing prior to marriage and children and to growing businesses. Spent a lot of time with buddies just going just because we had time. And I still, I guess, basically live off that knowledge of those days in my 20s through my 30s and into my 40s, whereas now a lot of tournaments I don't even go to practice at all. And I want to show up a bit. And I'll just show up on Saturday. And before, hopefully, by midday, I have either eliminated or dialed in on something because of all those times that I've been fishing. Now 17 years of working on 17 years of experience, I guess, 15 or 17 years of single man fishing, where I have that data to pull from, as well as the data of just going when I had time during the week in those early years. So, thinking about it, a lot of times on Fridays I have to work and cannot afford missing that dry day to get some work done, or the meetings that I had scheduled in order to go put my time in. So I trust my instincts. To answer your question, I think it's God-given instincts. I can't go do that with many other sports that are out there whatsoever. But why can't I with this one? You can't answer that question. I can't answer that question. But this is the one I feel like I have natural intuition and natural instinct that I can always give my Father in heaven the credit for, because I didn't make myself like that. I can thank my father, Danny Boggs, for introducing me to fishing. But then that's creek fishing, that's pond fishing, that's taken me a few tournaments here and there when I was younger. But that's not what made me have that instinct. That's not what made me have this passion, this deep love for being out there and trying to wrestle one of these guys in the boat. I think that comes from him. And so, I guess, again, to answer your question, I think it's something that was given to me, and I can go to any lake on the country and have confidence. I can pick up whatever bait that I have confidence in and figure out how to catch a fish from 1 foot to 35 feet. I'm confident at all levels of the water, although I prefer fishing shallow. So to give advice to anybody out there, I would have them question themselves, what is their intuition? What's their natural confidence? What's their natural talent that's there for them? And it could be electronics. It could be reading grass. It could be finesse fishing. It could be drop shot and, deep water fish and sight fishing, top water fishing. I mean, there's always, I think everybody's going to have a strength. And Travis, if God didn't make us that way, we'd all be doing the same thing on every day on the lake, right? We have to have our own strengths. We have to have our own want-tos and likes and passions about techniques and ways to fish in order to spread it around. And I think that one can evaluate themselves, figure out where that confidence is the most, go to any given body of water and try to make that body of water fit to what they want to do, at least for a couple of days or a day of practicing before you throw in the towel and be like, all right, I've got to go to plan B, C, D, or E or whatever to try to figure something out. But every body of water I go to, I'm going to try to fish to my strength and my confidence, no matter where it is and no matter what I've seen on YouTube or what I've read. I'm going to try to do what I feel like has been given to me at the highest level.
Great advice. Looking back at some of the local and regional anglers that we've had on the show, and you ask them this, some of these top guys, they really go back to instincts, of course, but your strengths and not listening to doc talk, not trying to chase techniques that you might not be familiar with. I think it's really important to what you just said is really fish your strengths. You mentioned the key phrase right there. Any lake in the country, you're going to bring what you have confidence into and try to make that work. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly right. Now, to that, right, so I went to Harris Chain, went to Florida for the first time last year to fish the Open. I thought, man, you can catch them flipping. I am going down there with this 2-crawl rod. I am going to catch their butts. They've never seen it. I know you're supposed to fish June bug or purples or whatever. If I'm going to fish the green pumpkin, and I'm just going, no. All right. 3 days into me force feeding them on every one of those little bodies of water down there, and I got like 2 bites on that thing before I had to pick up something June bug and something that was a worm in order to catch fish, right? So
yeah.
You can't be stubborn with what I'm saying. You can't, but you need, I think, at least need to try it. So I was able to still do my confidence in reference to pitching and flipping, but I had to change the bait selection in order to catch fish. I had to change my weight. I had to do the things that are of Florida, right? And I really felt like that's just what everybody does. That's what you read about, and surely these fish will still eat green pumpkin as much as they'll eat June bug, and unless someone can prove me wrong, that's not the case there on Harris Chain. I guess there has to be some level of humility with that, right? There has to be some level of I'm willing to do whatever it needs to do to catch a fish, although I want to try to catch it with my strength. I can look back at most of the wins, and knowing the show was coming, I had to think about them a little bit. Most of the wins I think I come up with was confidence and technique, but really finding the right area that had the fish in it. I think that was the key, whether it was hitting the right pocket that day, knowing the right area from past year's experience, getting away from people by running way up the lake or way back in the creek. I can say the area, finding the right area is probably more important than any technique out there in reference to winning tournaments. And that's not easy to do, man.
Great information. I know I took a bunch of notes here, and shortly after this, I'm going to be hitting the online stores. That's the benefit of hosting the show. I get all the secrets before the general public because we never know when these are going to be released. So I get to buy up and hoard everything myself before the general public. But I do appreciate you sharing these techniques and these tips. I really think it's going to help some people catch more fish, and I'm excited to give it a try this year. Before we let you go, I always ask our guests these 2 questions. I do want to know, and I kind of have an idea what your answer is going to be, but if you had one bait to use the rest of the season to catch fish, maybe you're going to surprise me with this. I don't know. But what would that bait be?
I mean, 100% the max scent flatworm on drop shot, right?
Well, that has been a common theme.
Now, man, I am going to surprise you. Because you
Okay.
said year, right? Like year round, best one bait, right?
Correct. Yep.
I'm gonna say a jig because you can fish it from 35-degree water to 95-degree water. You can fish it from 6 inches of water to 30 feet of water. So it's 50 feet, whatever. The jig is the most versatile bait that's out there in reference to catching bass. There's applications for that plastic right there, and I do want to pitch that the majority of the times. But as far as a year-round bait, I'm gonna go with the jig. Yep.
Now, there's a lot of different styles of jigs. Let's narrow it down. Are we a flipping jig, a football jig, a swimming jig? Do you have a
Well, man,
particular?
I gotta pick one. I gotta pick one, right?
You got to pick one, and I want the exact color.
Oh man, because I don't mind dragging a football jig, and I also don't mind pitching it on rock. Now, there's not great to pitch around wood for sure, but I'm gonna say a football jig and half-ounce green pumpkin with a little bit of orange, and probably a green pumpkin. What's it called? Pro Chunk Junior, Zoom Pro Chunk Junior. I think that's what it is. I call it a mule ear, but that's slang for what it's actually called. I think it's the Pro Chunk Junior by Zoom. Just a green pumpkin pro. Here we go. Yeah. There he is right there.
There it is. That is nice.
A little bit of a little tip that someone told me one time to get a little bit more weight and to keep your trailer from sliding up is to bite a little piece of worm off or a little piece of Cinco and running up your hook about an inch on that football jig.
Yeah.
It adds a little bit more weight to it without actually creating weight on the head, and then keeps that trailer from sliding back up the hook too much. Sometimes they'll do that.
Wow.
Good little tip somebody taught me.
I bet you got a lot of little tips, man. I wish we could probably go on for hours and hours. We are getting close to the end. I do got to ask you, what's your personal best? Largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass. I know you fish all over the country. Give me a little story behind it.
Man, as long as I've been fishing, and I get asked this occasionally by co-anglers, I can only say an 8-pound, 4-ounce bass is my largest bass. Now, I have caught 3 that weighed around 8.4. One was on Sam Rayburn back when I was just started fishing in my early 20s on a 3/4 ounce. I think it was just a rattle trap. Actually weighed that one, then it weighed 8.4. Then I caught one on Gunnersville on a frog, practicing for a regional back a long time ago too. It was probably in my 20s then as well, and it was also 8.4. And then I caught one here on my home lake, which is Old Hickory Lake, on a lipless rattle trap in March one year that was 8.4. So that was not none of those fish were in tournaments. They were all the days before the tournaments. Right. All 3 of them. But so yeah, that's my 3 biggest, and they're all weighed 8.4. A smallmouth, I haven't ever weighed my biggest smallmouth, but I've caught 2 around that 6-pound range. Nice, I've weighed a couple in the upper 5s.
What bodies of water were those?
That's
Dale?
On Del Hollow Lake. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was Del Hollow. And I think that I have had 2 spotted bass over 4 pounds, and they're both on Center Hill Lake, which is here in Middle Tennessee, but it does have a good population of largemouth, smallmouth, and spotted bass. Hey, it is a smallmouth crush, right, Travis? So I will throw you an invite to come down here and teach me on Del Hollow Lake, the famous Del Hollow Lake, world renowned for the largest smallmouth bass recorded. I have heard buddies say that they have seen fish nearly that big on that lake before. We used to go up there and fish with creek chub or shiners in the winter months, just in between tournament seasons, just to have fun. And the lake is chock full of big smallmouth. And I think that when we go there now for tournaments, you got to focus on largemouth. So I don't even really give them much respect anymore because there's a slot limit, and the majority of them are basically heartbreakers, right? You catch a 4 or 5 pound smallmouth and you got to throw it back.
Yeah.
It's very challenging. But for a fun day of fishing, if you find yourself down this way, be more than glad to have you along, man. Jump in the boat with me, and let's see if we can catch them on that drop shot. What do you say?
Hey, I think we both can teach each other something for sure. Seriously, Drew, I really appreciate you coming on the show. How can people keep up with you? You got a little presence on social media, and also want to, give a shout out to anyone that helps support you as far as fishing and fishing tournaments.
Travis, thanks for the opportunity, man. I do Facebook a little bit, but it's primarily just looking at marketplace, looking for farm equipment or hunting equipment or fishing equipment. But man, not anybody in the sponsorship world. But I mean, my wife Katie and my kids Wes and Macy, they're amazing support. They've never at any point in time said, "Oh, Daddy, I don't want you to go." They're always there with me, and I basically allow them to be a part of it. So it's a family venture more than it is a personal venture. I obviously want to thank my mom and dad for raising me with knowing Jesus Christ and introducing me to the outdoors, which is the majority of who I am, is a person that's passionate about the outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, or hiking, camping, floating the river, you name it, man. I want to be outside every day doing something. Today,
right.
Well, I'm not sure if we'll be out today, but we're going to be in here talking to Travis for sounds like a couple hours. I won't want to shut up. Don't look like.
Listen, you're always welcome back. We certainly. No, dude, I love it. I love it. In fact, I think we'll have to get you back at some point in the future. You know what? We do live shows as well every Monday night, so I think you might be a fun guest. I like your personality. I'm digging the vibe. So you're definitely welcome back anytime.
Man, that's a cool deal, Travis. I appreciate you, man. Good job with what you're doing out there. And again, I'm honored to be a part of the show and be invited. And you've got some real talent in what you're doing, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. And as always, guys, until next time, we'll see you on the water.
Thanks so much for listening today. Make sure that you're subscribed to the show and follow us on Instagram at SmallmouthCrush. Also, the YouTube channel, SmallmouthCrush. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating and comment with a review below. And as always, until next time, we'll see you on the water.